The Hidden Oracle is the first book in the Trials of Apollo series by Rick Riordan. It is also a sequel to The Blood of Olympus. And in this video, I'll be sharing my review of this book. Before getting into it, spoiler warning because this video will spoil you for this book, and I might reference events from both the Heroes of Olympus and Percy Jackson. And with that, let's get started. There are many reviews of The Hidden Oracle, and I've heard a lot of people say that they couldn't get into it. And because of that, people don't really finish the Trials of Apollo. Personally, I think it's sad because since I've already finished this series, I would say that these books are amazing. Sure, there were times when things felt slow, but if I look at the series as a whole, I would definitely recommend it to anyone who has read both PJO and the Heroes of Olympus. So, jumping into this book with those kinds of reviews, I was a bit hesitant. Added with the fact that the cliffhanger from the Blood of Olympus, with Leo and Calypso sailing into an unknown future, and Apollo being punished by Zeus, didn't really urge or push me to read what exactly happened to them. But, I think the main motivation that made me read this series was the fact that during that time, the Tower of Nero was recently released, and it was said that it was the last Camp Half-Blood book. And because of that, I really wanted to see how Rick would wrap it up, and since the series is already finished, there are more people trying to read the Trials of Apollo. So, I guess I just went with it, and I didn't regret it at all. I would rate The Hidden Oracle a 5 out of 5 stars. It was an absolutely amazing read, and I finished this book so fast. I don't understand as to why people are saying that it was very slow, because I don't think there was a boring moment in this book. I was so hyped with whatever was happening on this book, and I think it's a great introduction to another series. So, let's talk about the plot. The book starts out with Apollo falling into a dumpster. Seriously, I'm not kidding. That's exactly what happened. We learn in this chapter that Apollo has been turned mortal by Zeus, and was given the name Lester Papadopoulos. Just saying though, but Apollo's name? Dang, Zeus really wanted to humiliate him. So Apollo gets attacked by these two thugs, and is saved by Meg McCaffrey. In that encounter, Meg becomes Apollo's master, and right off the bat, I noticed that Meg was a demigod. The way she fought and controlled those fruits to defeat the thugs really gave it away, but I was unsure of her godly parent. Apollo senses this too, and he decides to visit Percy Jackson. A side note, Percy's reaction when he saw Meg and Apollo was priceless. It was really clear that Percy was so done with the gods asking him to save the world, and when he saw Apollo, he was like, why? And to be honest, I can't blame him. So, Apollo, Meg, and Percy enter the apartment, and I was shocked when I realized that Percy's mom was pregnant. I mean, I read Magnus Chase before the Trials of Apollo, and I did know that Percy mentioned in the last book of that series that Percy had a little sister named Estelle Blowfist, but it still shocked me when I read it in the Hidden Oracle. I was so happy for Percy, and Apollo notes that Sally looked a bit older than she had been, and I realized with a shock that Percy and the rest of his friends have grown up so much. Like, I just met Percy as a 12-year-old kid finishing 6th grade, and now he's already prepping up for college with Annabeth. Like, it's crazy. But anyway, after getting attacked by some Nozoi, Apollo and Meg reach Camp Half-Blood, and there, Apollo meets Will and Nico, and it's confirmed that the two of them were in a relationship. And honestly, I love them together so much. Plus, Nico calling Will significant annoyance, and Chiron allowing the two of them to sit in the Apollo table just because Nico had, and I quote, a doctor's note? I love that. Earlier, I mentioned the fact that I was unsure of Meg's godly parent, and I had quite a lot of guesses on it. I honestly thought she was going to be a daughter of Ares, the war god, or Hermes, the thieves and trade god, but it turns out I was wrong on both. She was the daughter of Demeter, aka the nature goddess and a sister of Zeus. Another side note, the person calling Meg a communist because of Demeter's symbol had me laughing. So, a three-legged death race hosted by a son of Hephaestus named Harley happens, and in that race, Apollo and Meg enter the Labyrinth and into Python's lair. To be honest, I was quite shocked that the Labyrinth was still there, because the Labyrinth was supposed to be destroyed ever since Daedalus sacrificed himself in the Battle of the Labyrinth. He said that when he dies, the Labyrinth dies along with him. So going back, we get the first mention of someone called the Beast, and for some reason, Meg seemed quite affected by this, which at first I wondered why, but now I should have known she had a big connection with this guy. So, another thing to mention was the fact that there was a connection and communication problem around the world, and because of that, Camp Haplet and Camp Jupiter haven't communicated with each other for weeks, which made me pretty sad because I thought they would keep in touch for a long time after how hard they fought together to defeat Gaia in the Blood of Olympus. Also, a couple of disappearances have been going around Camp Half-Blood, and it turns out that the Grove of the Dona was luring the demigods inside. So, a couple more events happen until we meet Rachel, and she's quite bitter towards Apollo because she hasn't received any prophecies in months, and in the last Olympian, Apollo was the one who blessed her as the new host of the Oracle of Delphi. So, if you forgot, the reason why Rachel couldn't get prophecies was because in the Heroes of Olympus series, the gods were struggling with their identities, and during that crisis, Apollo and Artemis were forced to go to Delphi for safety, and Python, who was resurrected by Gaia when the doors of death were still open, took over the Oracle of Delphi, and basically controlled it from sending more prophecies. Seeing Rachel after a lot of books was really refreshing for me, and what she had to say to Apollo and Meg was probably by far the biggest plot twist in the Riordan verse. Rachel had been doing some research on why the Oracle wasn't working, and traced it to this company called Triumvirate Holdings. This company has been working behind the scenes with the Titan War from PJO, with Kronos and Luke, and the Giant War from the Heroes of Olympus series. They were the ones who funded the weapons, catapults, machines, and everything needed for Kronos and Luke. Even the Princess Andromeda, the ship Luke used from the Sea of Monsters, was bought by them. On top of that, the ballistae and other weapons used by Octavian against Camp Half-Blood in the Blood of Olympus was funded by them, and that this triumvirate was led by 3 Roman emperors. Also, the beast from the three-legged death race could be a part of it. From the conversation Apollo heard in the Labyrinth, he put together that his mission during his trials was to free all the oracles before the triumvirate can get to them, and the disappearances of demigods in Camp Half-Blood was related to his mission, as the oldest oracle is the Grove of the Dona, and Apollo thinks that the triumvirate was starting with that oracle. Apollo learns that Meg has been kidnapped, and after some incredible singing, archery, and a rap for a queen ant, Apollo manages to rescue Meg. Apollo and Meg eventually reach the entrance of the grove, and there, the missing demigods were tied up. Apollo tries to free them, but is unable to because at that moment, Emperor Nero comes in, and it turns out that he was the beast this entire time, and that he was the one who sent those thugs from earlier to attack Apollo when he fell into the dumpster. Nero makes a bargain with Apollo by saying if Apollo and Meg open the grove's gates, he will release the captive demigods. Apollo refuses this offer, and when he looks at Meg, I was shocked. Meg was so quiet, and she was crying, and the feeling that Meg knew the beast from the three-legged death race suddenly made sense. Nero was Meg's adoptive father. He killed her real father and practically tormented her into obeying his every word. On top of that, he deliberately sent Meg to Apollo this entire time. I was starting to really like Meg throughout this book, and the fact that it was all just an act really shook me, and I honestly felt Apollo's heart shatter after that, and I couldn't blame him. He trusted her so much, risked his life to save her, and she just betrayed him. Apollo tries to persuade Meg out of Nero's big scheme, but Meg refuses. She orders Apollo to open the grove, and because Meg became Apollo's master, he does. Once the gates are open, the voices in the grove tell Meg that Nero means to burn the grove and the hostages to the ground. And this makes Meg go against Nero, and I was glad at that, because going against Nero meant that the friendship that started to bloom between Meg and Apollo wasn't an act at all, and it just showed that Meg truly trusted and cared about Apollo. It was real. A fight breaks out, and in the last attempt to destroy the grove, Nero throws Greek fire and burns the place. Apollo hurriedly saves the demigods, and Dryads help consume the fire. And during the chaos, Meg says she releases Apollo from being her servant, and runs away from there. Apollo tries to go after her, but it was too late. She was gone, and I wonder what would happen to her in the later books. After that, Apollo sees an arrow from the grove and decides to pick it up. Little did I know when I was reading this book that that arrow was going to play a very, very big role in the series. And yes, I'm still not over what the arrow did in that book. Like, I don't know if I'll ever forgive Rick for making me have emotions on a Shakespearean talking arrow, but anyway, a giant statue named Colossus Neronus attacks camp, and it ultimately breaks the Demeter cabin in the dining pavilion. Then, Percy and Mrs. O'Leary come to defend Camp Half-Blood, and just saying though, but I missed Mrs. O'Leary. I don't know the last time we've seen her, but it's just been so long. So eventually, Apollo manages to shoot a plague arrow into the statue, and this ultimately defeats it. The next day, Leo and Calypso arrive, and I was glad that they were okay after their journey for months on Festus. I had to mention the fact that I love the detail when Leo arrives and everyone just punches him as a greeting, because he survived when everyone thought he was dead. It turns out that they couldn't contact them sooner because of the connection problem, and that Calypso had no more powers as a Titaness ever since she left Ogygia. Leo offers to help Lester in his quest of finding the second Roman Emperor, and the book ends there. So, now I'll be answering the question, is this book underrated? People have asked this question to me, and I decided to address it in this video. At the start of this video, I mentioned the fact that not that many people are able to get into this book and enjoy it, because for them, it's slow-paced and it doesn't really hold their interest. And because of that, only few people really enjoy this book. And for those who enjoyed it, this question pops up. But for me, yes, this book is quite underrated. Going against the popular opinion of not enjoying this book, I would say that this book is a great introduction to another series, and I don't know about you guys, but after finishing this book, I wanted to go immediately to the next book because I wanted to know who the second emperor is. I think I sort of understand what people are saying about not getting that interested. Personally, I didn't feel that compelled to jump into the series because Apollo as a main character didn't really interest me as much, but this book changed my mind. I would say that Apollo was a great storyteller, and honestly, Rick has kept the humor from PJO present in this series. So, because I felt all that, I would say that this book is underrated, because it doesn't get the love I feel it deserves. So, how about you? Do you think this book is underrated? Let me know in the comments down below.